This video is going to go through the concept of rhyme in poetry. And I know you already are aware of what a rhyme is, but it's going to go into a little more detail with some specific ways that poets use rhyme. So please do watch this because it has several terms that you may not yet be aware of. This first slide just goes through the ways that you've already seen and talked about rhyme. So usually you talk about rhyme with the very end of a line, and what we call that specific kind is an end rhyme, obviously because it's at the end of a line of poetry. So in this one, would rhymes with stood and could. Fair rhymes with where. Okay, so that's not too tricky for anybody to understand. Okay. To describe the way that these lines rhyme, usually we will assign a letter, and we'll go to the next letter in the alphabet every time we get a new word that doesn't rhyme with a previous one. So in the poem over here, two roads diverged in a yellow wood. Wood is the end of our first line. We don't have a rhyme for that yet, so we assign the letter A. And sorry I could not travel both. Both has not rhymed with anything else, so we assign the letter B. And be one traveler, long I stood. Stood rhymes with would. So since those two rhyme, they get the same letter. So that's why we put A with this one. And look down one as far as I could. Could rhymes with both stood and would. So it gets the same letter, A. To where it bent in the undergrowth. And actually, I have this labeled incorrectly. This should be the letter B because undergrowth rhymes with both. Then took the other as just as fair. And this should be a C now, because that one does not rhyme with anything we've had before. And having perhaps the better claim, should be a D now, because claim does not rhyme with anything else, so we go to the next letter. Because it was grassy and wanted where. Where rhymes with fair, so it should get the same letter, which now is C. So the way that we would describe this is A, B, A, but then it's B, C, D, C. Okay. When we go beyond end rhyme, we can make things a little bit more complicated by looking at words that almost rhyme. So a lot of times poets will use words that just nearly rhyme with each other, and we call that a slant rhyme. If we were labeling the rhyme scheme, we would count a slant rhyme as an exact rhyme for actually labeling the pattern. But this works the same way as a regular rhyme in a poem. It just makes it so that poets aren't as constricted by the words that they have to choose from, because they don't just have to look at the exact rhymes. They have a lot of options. For example, if somebody was trying to use the word orange at the end of a line of poetry, and they were trying to do an exact rhyme, they'd run into a lot of trouble. But they have a lot of options if they use slant rhymes, because it could rhyme with something like porridge or forage. So it gives people more options. Beyond just end rhyme, however, there's something called internal rhyme that poets will often use, where they'll rhyme two words in the same line. So if we look over on the right, we have once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered weak and weary. Dreary rhymes with weary. Hip-hop songs will actually use this really often. So if you listen to a rap song in the near future, just kind of keep your ear open for that, because it does come up really often where they'll use the same sound device. It will often have the first rhyme halfway through, like in this one, dreary, and then the second rhyme at the end, like this one, weary. But it doesn't have to be like that. In fact, if we read through this, we'll get to while I nodded nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping. As of someone gently rapping at my chamber door. So this is repeated. You'll also notice that this is an internal rhyme going from one line to the next. Sometimes it can go over two lines where they just repeat that rhyme, but it's not just at the end. And then we see tapping here again repeated from up here. So those rhymes are not coming at the end, so we call them internal rhymes, even though in this case they're on two separate lines. The last term that we're going to go through is the idea of a free verse poem. Starting mostly in the early 1900s, a lot of poets started writing poems with no actual end rhymes. So we call that free verse because it's free from that need to have lines rhyme with each other. The words still have to be memorable, and poets still need to think about how all the words sound together. So if you look at the example on the right, this is a poem by Carl Sandburg. The fog comes on little cat feet. It sits looking over harbor and city on silent haunches and then moves on. Okay, these were not carelessly chosen words. This is a very memorable image, but there is no actual rhyme in here. The closest thing we have is feet and city, which is really stretching it if you want to call that a rhyme. But there are many poems that are even further from this from having any kind of a rhyme. So this is another option. Again, we call that a free verse poem if it has no end rhyme scheme that you can find. Okay, that's it for the information on rhyme, but make sure to watch the other videos that go through the poems at the end of this presentation because those will help clarify how this comes up, and it'll also go through some of our other concepts that we've already talked about. All right, thank you very much.